Good afternoon. Welcome to the last session of the day, session 4. My name is Allison Adams. I am the president and CEO of the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky and a partner with Bloom and all the good folks at the Kentucky Youth Advocates. I appreciate the invitation to be able to introduce you to the session 4 speakers. In today's polarized world, finding common ground can feel impossible, but it doesn't have to be. We know that. Our next speakers, the host of Pantsuit Politics, Stewart, Holland, and Beth Silvers, have built a national reputation for fostering civic discourse, bridging divides, and tackling difficult conversations with empathy and understanding. Let's welcome Sarah and Beth to share how we can create productive conversations even in the most pressing and complex issues affecting children's well-being. Sarah and Beth, we're so glad you're here.
Hello, everyone. The last session of the day. It's a tough one. I'm going to start shamelessly complimenting all of you. This is a really cute crowd. Like, the fits are on point. I don't blow smoke. This is something I take seriously. And I was noticing that the outfits are very, very strong. And I noticed 1, 2, then I got to about 5 or 6, and I was like, this is just a cute crowd. It's just a cute crowd. So good job on that, at least. And then we're gonna ask you to work just a little bit. It's very easy. It's called a Slido. You can join by taking this QR code because we're gonna do a little poll. Who doesn't like a poll? Let me tell you who likes a poll. My 10-year-old son every morning. Alexa, poll of the day. Does anybody else's child? Oh, good. It's just not. Oh, I feel so much less alone every day, and they're always dumb. But he loves it so much. Because we just like to be asked our opinions.
Ketchup, not barbecue sauce. We did it, everybody.
Yeah. And sometimes the answers are so bad. Like the actual majority vote. I'm like, people are wrong about this. But we like to be asked our opinions. Obviously, I'm a podcaster. Clearly, I like to share my opinion. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little polling to get the vibe in the room, to get everybody a little energized. So this is how you do. You scan the QR code. Is everybody doing it? Is everybody finding it? Easy. Lovely.
We'll try to get that set up. While we are doing that, I just want to assure you that we are Kentuckians. I think some of you were probably with us in December when we spoke for the Kentucky Youth Advocates. I see some familiar faces in the room. What a lot of life we've all lived since December. You know, it was a simpler time back in December. But if you don't know us, I am from Union, Kentucky, the Florence Y'all Water Tower. That is my exit. All right, Northern Kentucky. And then I grew up in McLean County, other side of the state, right outside of Owensboro. I always tell people I am from Livermore, Kentucky, where there are 2 banks, 1 grocery store, still 0 stoplights. So I grew up on a dairy farm in McLean County, and then I went to school in Lexington, and my family moved to Union, and that is where we shall stay. We love Union. And Sarah is from Paducah, and if you've not spent time talking with Sarah about Paducah, she is the official ambassador for the town. No one loves their place as much as Sarah loves Paducah. So we have a lot of affection for Kentucky. It is really special to us when we get to speak for Kentucky groups. And hopefully that will become obvious to you in our warm-up Slido question.
They say it's working. Okay. Did not participate. Everybody get up and leave. Actually, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I was in New York City. I planned a trip and was like, oh my God, I planned a trip for New York City on Derby weekend. Will they take my real ID away? Okay. A lot of sauce. Look, y'all, one time I tried to teach my children a lesson, and I took them to Kroger to buy scratch-off lottery tickets about how bad gambling is and how you lose your money, and every single one of them won money. Every single one. Okay. Wait, I'm still intrigued by the did not participate. Like, just didn't bet. Watched the Derby, but didn't bet. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
My husband bets on everything. He is a prop bettor. You know what I mean? He'll be like, Beth, there is a tennis tournament in Missouri today, and I need this player to swing with her left hand twice. And if she does, we will win $15. I'm like, that's exciting, Chad. Well, we were here for Dr. Ellis's wonderful presentation. And I was thinking about the work that you all do in this room and the challenges of that work, and then getting really inspired by her talking about problem solving and solutions. And I also heard this voice in my brain that was like, collaboration and co-creation in this economy? Because we are in a tough time right now, even tougher, I think, than when we were with some of you in December. And we wanted to start by talking about the fact that the challenge of coming to an event like this and being with like-minded people who really understand your discipline is that then you have to leave. And you have to talk to other people who aren't in your discipline and don't know about this and don't share your passion in order to get much of anything done. And that's hard. And right now, we are just going to have to start with the premise that most of those people are not their best selves. I talk about politics on the internet, and so I get to be a repository for a lot of people's dysregulation and not their best selves. And what I keep telling myself when I read something that is just like hurtful or wrong-headed or mean-spirited is I just try to stop and think, this person is just as dysregulated as I am right now. I am experiencing chaos. This person is too. I just got another text from my brilliant friend who worked for the CDC and does not anymore. And that kind of thing is happening in this person's life too. And so when we are trying to drive change in the midst of too much change coming too almost randomly at everyone, it is really helpful to me to just remember this person is as dysregulated as I am right now.
We were at lunch and I said, I think the entire country is in scarcity mode. That, I don't know how much psychology you guys have studied, but I'm guessing, based on the crowd, quite a bit. Humans are not their best in scarcity mode. They don't operate at their best mode. I was telling my husband after the election, I said, in the midst of trauma, we go to fight, flight, or freeze, right? We all know that. We know the ACEs. Makes a lot of sense based on our evolutionary history. It's just a real bummer that in modern times, you really need people to fire up that prefrontal cortex in the midst of stress and chaos, which is a huge, massive ask. And so we thought we'd start by talking about, you there? You there? Anybody there? Oh, no, I don't want to go that way. No, I'm just making it out. We were going to ask, there we go, I'm most worried about. When we were listening to the previous workshop, I thought, I'm going to do an easy poll while we're waiting for the Slido to start. If I dropped a curtain down game show style and said, just kidding, we're not going to do this talk, that massages and naps for everyone, who would weep with relief? Yep. I had a friend once who ended up in the emergency room, and she was like, I'm just so glad to be here and rest. And I thought, that is not the vibe that we want. But I think it's where we are. I think a lot of people would see everything. It just keeps coming up. I mean, it's very, very intense. And in a moment of chaos, wait, what did somebody say? Oh, no, listen, I live in perpetual fear of Oprah. I'm going to need like 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off. No, I know. My equivalent is Oprah. I will not be well. I will be very upset when we lose Dolly, but losing Oprah would send me right over the edge. I think we all have our person like that. But when we were talking about this and we were registering, we had a hunch that this is what this poll was going to look like. That in a moment of stress, there's a lot of chaos. Chaos presents opportunity. It's high stakes, but it also can be high reward. There is opportunity inside moments like this for connection, for change, for communication, for a few steps forward, even if they're followed by a few steps back. And I think that's what we really want to chip away at. That's what you guys have been chipping away at your whole careers, and most certainly today, but we want to get into it a little bit more in depth with you. Marjorie. Oh, no.
It's the end of the day. End of day vibes. So I was looking at this list and finding myself wondering, people who see the world very differently than many of us in this room do, what are they really worried about right now? because that's where the opportunity lives. I know a lot of people who are like, I support this, but not like this. I like this idea, but not this way. That's a big step forward. You know what I mean? Just to get the not this way is a big step forward. And so I am really trying to think, okay, not this way. What does that mean you're worried about? And where does my worry overlap with your worry? Especially in the most localized situations we can find. I shared with many of you all in December that a lot of my free time is spent with my church's nonprofit child care center. We think we were the largest nonprofit child care center in the state of Kentucky, and I just said were because we closed on April 18th. And it has introduced me to a new form of grief. It is just devastating to me that we could not make it work. And I've had a really hard time explaining to people why we couldn't make it work. And I find myself saying things like, well, it's a combination of financial pressure and labor pressure and regulatory pressure. And people look at me like, I don't care. I don't care. Where am I going to take my kid? I don't care. And that's a totally fair reaction. And even within our congregation, there are people who have not been behind the scenes on this, and they're like, why? We've done this for 70 years. Why has this stopped now? And I am learning to say, instead of regulatory pressure, how many steps do you think are involved in changing a diaper in the state of Kentucky? When we are short-staffed, I cannot have one of our nice church ladies come into a room and count for ratio purposes. I can't fill a sub with a volunteer. What do we do when good reasons lead to bad outcomes? I don't think anybody who decided there are 14 steps to change a diaper thought, and we'd like centers to close, because they've made too many mistakes. They've dropped step 7 too many times. I don't even know what step 7 is. Some of y'all might tell me that is the critical step. But you know what I mean? What do we do? And I think that's a good, rich question for conversation with people. What do we do when good intentions lead to bad outcomes? You said you support, pick your thing that's happening right now, but not this way. What could we do? What else could we be doing to get to the thing that led to your support? And then what are you worried about in the not this way where we can intersect and find a path forward?
Yeah, because when we say not this way, and we're talking about the sum of a person's worries, it's math we'll never understand. That's the heartbreaking part, is that we want it to be a calculus that will plug in the numbers as we understand them and get to the total. But there's an aspect of humanity where you'll never get someone else's numbers. I was talking about this with a friend recently. My youngest son has type 1 diabetes. It is a disability that a lot of people think they understand, because there's an aspect of it that is simple math. Carbs, insulin. Now, if you've had any experience with type 1 diabetes, you know it is anything but simple. That it's not just about carbs and insulin. It's about stress and adrenaline and growth and hormones and, this is carb-free, but actually this sugar does send your blood sugar up. And just a million different things. So even, I think, the disability that people can conceptualize in a simple math formula, you live it and you're like, there's nothing math about this. There's a lot of magical thinking on my part at 3 a.m. with a low blood sugar, but not a lot of math. And I think that is what is so hard, is we look at someone and we want to do that math. And we want to say, like, well, I see that this is your struggle and this is but like, what's the famous saying? You don't know the rock in their shoe, and you certainly don't know the weight of it, right? And I think that is what is so hard inside these moments, is we think it's a daycare. Put a person in front of a kid, make sure they don't walk in front of a car. What's the big deal? For someone else's math, right? And then people do that to our calculus, and your head starts to spin around backwards. My son was first diagnosed. Somebody looked at me and said, "What, did you just feed him a bunch of sugar?" I'm like, Yep, that's it. And that's when I came up with a phrase I use a lot in situations like this, which is the chaos lottery. No one ever said that to me again, but I was ready had they approached me with that particular approach, which is, no, it's the chaos lottery. My ticket got pulled, yours could be next. That's just how it works. That's just how it works. You didn't do anything wrong. Your number just got pulled. And in those moments, when we can acknowledge that, when we can see that, when we can let someone see in us that we both empathize and acknowledge that there's an aspect we'll never understand, that's where the sliver of opportunity becomes available.
And that kind of stress can open doors. You know, Sarah and I were unprepared to pass the microphone back and forth today. It's fine. It's kind of nice because it's a reminder that that is what a conversation should feel like. And sometimes that pause in between two people speaking is where the magic happens. So just taking a second to like absorb what's been said when you're sitting with someone who has a very different life experience than you is big. I drove into this beautiful space today. I think Shelbyville is the best. And I drove in and I saw the silos outside, which really reminds me of home. And that gave me a lot of really good memories. And then it made me think about a really sad memory, which is that my grandfather died during a tornado because he was up on a grain bin during that weather event. So, you know, there are always little signals that seem meaningless happening in a conversation. And you guys have expertise in that in some ways, right? I find that my expertise goes out the window when I am advocating for a solution that seems obvious to me with someone to whom it does not seem obvious. Everything I know about how to be empathetic and graceful is like way over here. Because come on, can't we just agree on this? You know, the policy agenda for Kentucky Youth Advocates is like that, right? You're like, who's against this? And what is their problem? And even if they're not against it, why would they not make it a priority? It's so obvious. And all of that flies away. So the pauses and the cues and the places where someone says something, they're like, that's bananas. It's just helpful to me to sometimes say, wow, that is an interesting perspective that I have not heard before. I would love to hear more about it. And then just wait and see if they tell you what their version of the silo is. You know, the thing that has multiple meanings for them or that triggers something new, or that really gets to the heart of whatever the stressor is that's causing resistance between the two of us.
Because here's the thing, once a person feels heard, you don't actually need to agree with them or even have a solution for whatever they're struggling with. The power of being heard is insane. Let me tell you how I know, because I knocked on 5,000 doors when I was running for Paducah City Commission, and when you knock on someone's door and ask for their vote, they're like, word, this is my chance. I got some things to say about politics. And it's the very first time I ever heard the name Alex Jones knocking on doors that day, one of my days. And so what I learned is how much people feel silenced, how much people feel unheard, unseen. I should have known that because I grew up on Oprah and she told me that a lot. But you gotta have to really feel it in your muscles and your bones before you get it. And what else I learned is that I didn't have to agree with them, that I didn't even have to fully understand what they were saying. It was almost like you could see them growing in stature, their load lightening, just because they could get it off their dang chest. I have these lots behind my house that were overgrown with wisteria. And I don't know how much you know about wisteria, but wisteria grows and then it contracts. And then it grows and then it contracts. It pulls. And so I had trees literally like this. And we cut the wisteria when we cut the weight of the vines, and the trees literally went like this. And that's what you see with people when they can finally just unload, because they will not hear until they've been heard. And the bigger again, it's high stakes, but it's high reward. Because in those moments, depending on how long they've been silenced, how long they felt unheard, if you show up and say, I hear that. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, But I hear that. Then there's that moment where there's a world of possibilities. Because the person who stepped into a place of being heard for the first time in a long time is persuadable.
So we're here in people's feelings when you guys have been talking about like measurable outcomes, because my concern is that before we can get to that data-driven, focused, policy-oriented attempt to deal in the trees and the roots and the nutrients and the soil, we just got to establish some basic trust and confidence in each other. And that is what I run up against in every conversation, even in my local community. One of the worst political meetings I have ever had in my life took place in Florence, talking about homelessness. The most local of issues with the most local of people. It was terrible. It was terrible. And you could feel all this national stuff hanging over it and making it worse. Did any of y'all watch The White Lotus? I felt like it was kind of a gift, that scene where Leslie Bibb's like, we're not going to talk about Donald Trump tonight, are we? Because that's really where I'm getting. I just feel like there is nothing to be gained for us to sit and debate the president. You're probably not going to change my mind. I'm certainly not going to change your mind. Let's just move on from that and get into the thing in front of us. Even still, though, it hangs out there because it has become a barometer of trust. Are we on the same team or not? Do we see the world the same way or not? And so we're kind of in this, let me tell you about the silos for me. Let Sarah talk to you about type 1 diabetes. Let me tell you about our child care center, because we got to get something together here that connects us through this stress and then motivates us to move beyond it together.
Because here's the thing. I think we've been stuck, like Beth just described, on opposite teams. We wrote a book several years ago called I Think You're Wrong, But I'm Listening, and we talked about jerseys. Everybody puts on their jersey, and now we're like, isn't that charming that we describe them as something you could actually take off? Tattoos might have been more accurate. Because I think we were very much in that us-them competitive space. But stress can be motivating, because the higher the stakes get, the more you just need help. You don't need points on a board. You need help. You need real help, and you don't really care where it comes from. The tougher things get, the more chaotic things get, the more stressed people feel, the less it becomes about winning, and the more it becomes about surviving. And that sucks, and also it's an opportunity. We always say on our podcast, like, look, we have an example right in front of us with natural disasters. If somebody rows up to your boat in a literal rowboat, you don't ask who they voted for. You get in the boat. You don't care, and they don't care either. They're there to help. And so I think that this is where, if we're not there, we're going to get there very soon. And still, we just got through a pandemic, and I know we all saw moments of that, and then we saw moments of it going sideways, where people were in need of help. Or I think more they were just in a place of fear. And fear is not quite the same as stressed and needs help, right? They can overlap, but there's a Venn diagram there. But I think when people need help, when they feel not just stressed, but squeezed, that's different. That's different than wanting to assert any sort of partisan identity, or to assert any sort of, like I said, competitive edge, putting points on the board. It's just a different footing. It's the instability where you reach out for a hand because you're going to fall, not because you're in a posture like this.
So we want to think about the possibility and what we're motivated toward. And similar to the activity that you did with Dr. Ellis, I would love to hear, what do you, especially after a whole day with like-minded people, after we've said the world is really difficult and we're all worried about everything, including losing Dolly Parton, What do we feel is the issue that we are inspired to pursue hard? And let me ask this a way that I have been trying to ask elected officials who we interview. Elected officials are very frustrating to interview. I'm just going to be honest with you. And so a thing I have been trying to ask Democrats, I'm just going to be honest with you, is like, we have people right now in the majority who are willing to be a little bit reckless in pursuit of what they believe in. What are you willing to be a little bit reckless in service of? Not that we want to mirror everything about the tactics there, but what are you, and however you vote, whatever you believe in, what are you willing to be a little bit reckless in pursuit of right now?
I love seeing these rolling. Community and children. I'm not going to cry. I'm going to keep it together. Well, I do a good news brief, so I really like the Kentucky's drop and overdose rate, and I would like to add another very black and white success, since we're in a room full of Kentuckians, which is we have our real IDs. There's some states that hadn't even started yet. Mine's about to expire. Good job, Kentucky. Good job. We don't all have to run to an airport tomorrow and be like, how the heck am I going to get on this plane? I mean, yay. I like it when Kentucky's on the top of any list. Not really. Some lists I don't really want to be on the top of, which we are, in fact, on the top of. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think those hardcore wins are so important, and that is a muscle. We are negativity biased. We just are. And so learning to zoom in on those concrete wins is so important. I do want to say something about, while we're talking about what inspires us, because I was saying, people were saying daily work, forward momentum, and the slide of what worried somebody used the word permanent. I don't even know what context they used it in. And something I'm clinging to so much right now, is Beth said on one of our shows, it's never the last day. It's never the last day. Strike permanent from your vocabulary. When you're working with... Don't use permanent. It's never the last day. There's no stasis in human relationships, in community, in American politics. It just doesn't exist. Like reminding myself, like we haven't reached some final destination where solutions aren't available, where fighting for what matters isn't available. Remembering, because stress does that too, right? Stress shrinks our vision. It closes off the horizon. What is that? Oh, it's so hard to talk to y'all when you're looking behind me at all these fun answers. What do you mean? Canada. I know. Who doesn't? Who doesn't love Canada? I saw somebody wrote Canada and Australia's elections. I totally agree. So I think that's opening that timeline back up, reminding ourselves that stress can pull everything close, and the more we can push everything out and see wider and bigger. And that's why we all love kids so much, because they help us do that, right? That's why kids are so inspiring, even in moments of stress. That's why they're so motivating. That's why we don't actually harm our toddlers, even though they're such tiny little dictators, because they're so good at keeping us like forward momentum. Zoom out, see what they offer, you know? I don't like toddlers, in case y'all couldn't tell. I'd have 11 kids if it weren't for toddlers. And so I think that zooming out and remembering like stress shrinks us, and the more we can find that for ourselves and offer that to other people to kind of zoom out. I was clinging to a book earlier this year called The Storm Before the Calm, which I highly recommend, by George Friedman. And he's talking about these cycles of history and how we're in the middle of one now. But they're cycles. They're cycles. They're not conclusions. They're cycles. Everything's constantly changing, things way bigger than us. And helping to like zoom out, or helping someone else zoom out and say, I know this feels like the last day, but it's not. We haven't gotten to the last day.
So we really mostly love to come do things like this because we like to talk with you, not at you. So we've done our part of talking at you now, and we recognize this is your last session and you're ready to go. But we would love to talk with you for a little bit. And while you're thinking about who would like to talk with us first, no pressure, I want to share with you a conversation I had with my new friend Leslie in the back. We were chatting about how we have been through multiple periods of instability in our adulthood and how we feel sturdier this time. I actually find myself much less freaked out than I have been at other points over the last 10 years. And Leslie helped me understand, I think that's because my daughters are 14 and 10, and they are now the freaked out ones. My 14-year-old has as one of her best friends a girl from Iran who is not a citizen and who has an immigration appointment coming up soon. And her friend group is scared. They are very, very worried about this. And so it doesn't do for me to be like, the world is on fire, I cannot manage your emotional state. Because I have to be sturdy for her. And it's also like we got some reps now. I thought the world was going to end a few times before today. And here we still are. It hasn't been the last day. And so I'm trying to remember, when I think about what do I feel inspired about right now, it is really just the concept of my own resilience and knowing that I can pick an issue and go hard at that issue in my community, and I will lose on some of those. I have lost on this child care center. I have spent so much of my life trying to keep this child care center open, and I failed. And it's not the last day. I'm going to pick back up again and continue to work for families in our community on how we can support them, specifically through my church, with raising their children. So that's what inspires me. We would love to come to someone out there in the great sea of beautifully dressed people and hear from you.
I wanted to say something about what Beth just said about her child center. I just read a great quote, I think it was Arthur Miller, and it said, the goal in life is to have the right regrets. It's making me teary. It's not to succeed all the time. With Beth's Child Care Center, if she has any regrets, what's the regret? Trying hard for something for the children in our community? It doesn't mean success. It means that once you have the regrets, if it doesn't work out the way you wanted to, you did your best, you left it on the field, and you did it for the right reasons. I'm not really worried about anybody in this room having the wrong regrets. I know somebody has a question. Oh, yes. Listen, any day of the week, I would be up for a dance-off, but if that's your question, I'm out. Too many low blood sugar alarms.
I guess my question was, do you still believe that true bipartisanship is achievable in today's political climate, or are we redefining what collaboration looks like?
Sure, cool, yeah. Y'all just clap, you don't have to answer it. Nah, I'm just kidding. Look, Congress, I'm gonna sit down for this one. Congress. Look, I went to the legislators. That might not have been what you meant, right? Are we talking about bipartisanship among citizens? Yeah, every day, all day. Happens everywhere. Happens in my town, happens in y'all's town. I'm not worried about that really at all, to be honest. Bipartisanship in Congress? I think bipartisanship in Congress is in constant flux and constant redefinition because Congress is a living body that changes and grows and moves and sways, as do the parties that run it. So, am I ever worried about the American experiment, as the case may be? No. I think that the problem we have right now is that there's not real bipartisanship because what really matters is the party you're in. What I mean is, before, when the parties had more moderates and more swing districts, the other party could check you. But now really, we're all living this. The only party that can check you is your own. And that is different. That's very different than previous times in American history. But again, I don't think we're at the last day. I don't think we've settled at a phase and then we're done. And I think that we are in a real transition. And I don't know about y'all, but I hate transitions. I hate the messy middle. I love a beginning. Give me a bouquet of freshly sharpened pencils any day of the week. Or give me a big party to celebrate the milestone at the end. But the middle, pass. And I just think that's what we're in right now. We're in the messy middle of redefining sort of how we check each other, And, I said that I'm not worried about that in communities, but I think some of that's happening there too, as well as in Congress.
We just interviewed this delightful young man named Jake Rakoff. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. He's running for Congress in California against his old boss. He was a congressional staffer, and now he is challenging the person he worked for. And when we interviewed with him, I was like, he is so young and great. He's 37. It made me feel really silly about myself and my perception of age. But we were talking with him about systems change, because Jake's 3 big ideas, and he would represent the part of Los Angeles that just burned. But his 3 big ideas running for Congress are term limits, not taking any corporate PAC money. What's the other one? I just lost. My brain just went. Shoo. And he's going to have a town hall in his district once a month, because the person he used to work for doesn't even live in the district anymore. So I said to him, I'm pretty excited that you're talking about systems to the conversation that you all just had, because that is where the problem lives to me. It is not that we have 535 selfish bozos in Washington, D.C. I just don't believe that. We have some, but I don't think all 535 of them. It is not to me that Frankfurt is a toxin that once you step into it deletes your brain cells. It is that our systems are not conducive to the modern world. That's as nice as I can say it. And so I think possibly not around big controversial issues. You can still, as Jake pointed out to us in our interview, you can still pass legislation on a bipartisan basis as long as it's small. Congress just had a near unanimous vote about batteries. So you can do bipartisan work, and you know what? I'll take it. I'll take the battery vote. I'll take every win right now. Batteries are very important. About the big things, no, I really don't think so. I really don't think so right now, and I think that's not sustainable. I think we're going to get real tired of that, especially as the problems come at us faster and faster. Because all my friends who are losing their jobs because of paused grants and shuttered departments, they are also going into a job market where AI is taking some of the jobs that they are really skilled and could do fantastic work in. And all those pressures converging at one time, I think, are going to force systems change. And when our 37-year-olds from California are running on an agenda that I think every person in my very red county in Kentucky would agree with, that makes me excited. That's where I think the opportunity is. Who's next? Who has another softball? Where are you pointing me to? Ah, thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Jessica. I am the director of the ACES Indiana Coalition. So working in Indiana is kind of bleak right now. There's lots happening and lots of different challenges related to ACEs prevention work, as well as collaboration and community stuff. So my question is in regards to family and family conversations. I have extended family that are very on one end of the political spectrum, and I have other family that is on the sheer opposite end. And although those values used to somewhat align, they now no longer do. And so I'm wondering how we can facilitate positive conversations around human rights and the things that matter by somehow finding aligning values when fact is no longer fact. Sorry, that was a very long-winded question.
You're all good. I'll tell you, we have a community of listeners who discuss issues all the time, and there is a little Indiana cohort, and they are extremely stressed. They talk all the time about what's happening in your legislature and how the struggle is real there. Indiana and Tennessee. We have to check on our neighbors. You know, we get this question all the time, okay? And it is a version of we don't live on the same planet anymore. We don't get the same news. We don't think what is real is real. Like, how can we even begin? And I try to remember that the people in my life, my family, the people who are influencing my children, their grandmother who sees the world quite differently than I do in terms of both politics and religion. How do we stay in relationship with her and get to the things that we love about her and enjoy that relationship? And the answer to me is very unsatisfying. It's always to remember that she is a person, not my project. I can make anything a project. I can make anything something that I need to design curriculum around, and I need a plan, and probably if I work hard enough at it, I'm gonna really pull us all over the finish line. And it just doesn't, right? Because you are encountering in this person that whole graphic of tree and soil that y'all were talking about earlier. And I have realized that my mission is just to be her daughter-in-law, not to deal with that whole ecosystem. There are places in my life and yours where we are dealing with that whole ecosystem. She's well aware of them. She has her feelings about that, and I have mine. But in our relationship, my job is to remember that she makes the best apple butter. And she has taken my kids to feed goats with their hands in the middle of a field, which is an experience I never could have given them. And that, to me, is just going to the most fundamental human rights conversation, which is that we love each other, and we love each other, and we keep loving each other, and that is just a choice that we make. And I may never like how she votes or who she thinks should preach or even be in a church, and that's okay. Because I'm going to show my kids, and I will point out those differences to them. That is not how I see it, right? I disagree with Mama about that. But I will show them that we just keep trying with each other. Because if we don't, if that's lost, then there is no foundation for the rest.
So I think one of the biggest challenges of our time is how to give empathy to those who don't give it in return. We're all really good at it with children, the people in this room. I'm a court-appointed special advocate. I was on the phone with a social worker the other day. We were talking about foster parents who've gone out of their way for this child I care about a great deal who's been through just trauma that would leave you cold. There are no words. And the social worker said, they say they understand he's been through trauma, but then they speak as if he's choosing how he behaves. I've been on the phone with a lot of people like that. I know he's had a lot of trauma, but. Which tells me you don't know that he's had a lot of trauma. And I want so badly, in the case of children, which seems like the easiest lift to get there, right? For people to bridge that gap. And then I refuse to do it with adults. I just refuse, right? I just read a great novel called How to Sleep at Night, which I love the title of. It's all about politics and having someone in your family with opposing politics. How do you sleep at night? Who said that in their lives? And I think so often with kids with my own kids, I'll feel like, this is what we demand of each other and we won't give it to kids. This is what we want for ourselves, but we won't give it to kids. But we don't really even give it to each other. It's easy to give empathy to someone who's hurt you understand, right? It's harder to give empathy to someone whose hurt has turned into cruelty or hatred. I don't like it either. I don't like it when it's my own family member. I don't like it when it's somebody in my community. But I haven't found a different way except for just keep going back to the treating them like a person, not a project, treating them with love instead of judgment, digging back in. The scales from the eyes moment for me with this in my own family is my father, who votes very differently than me. In the midst of the 2020 peak social justice movement, he looked at me and said, I know I'm an old white guy, but I still have worth. And I thought, oh no. He heard he was worthless. That's what I'm supposed to be fighting. But that's what he heard from me. And I thought, oh no, I'm doing this all wrong. I'm doing this all wrong. And I think that that's what's so hard, is not when it's easy to give, and again, it's the easiest cases people still struggle with. A child that's deeply traumatized. And it's still a big lift for people. Let's not get all the way to the other end of the spectrum with a fully grown adult who's hateful and cruel. But they do all live on the same spectrum. The human spectrum. Or as my friend Lacey says, I don't know. People are the worst. And also the best. It's weird. That's it. That's the whole kit and caboodle. All right. Anybody other questions? Yes. Last one.
Hi, my name is Phoenix, and just listening to you, I'm really inspired by your courage to get up and speak your truth. So my question is, what is it that you draw from to be able to deal with difficult conversations? Because I know a lot of people don't like to be uncomfortable. So that's my question, because I know a lot of people are uncomfortable, but they don't have a platform that they can voice who they are. So I'd like to know, what do you draw from to do what you do?
That's a very generous question. Thank you so much. I mean, some of it is, for me, it's just personality. I always say on one of my tombstones, she asked hard questions. I love it. One of my best friends in the world, he jokes, we meet someone, and we're like, hi, what's the meanest thing your dad ever said to you? Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just my personality to a certain extent. I just dig it. I grew up watching Oprah every day. Oprah was never afraid to go right for it. I'm following her lead. And I try to give a lot of grace for that. I have a much higher tolerance for difficult conversations. And I did before we even started this work, much less now. And so that's fine. I have a best friend who loathes conflict. And she had to take me aside in college and be like, hey, everybody else doesn't like this as much as you do. And I'm like, okay. But I also think part of the reason I'm like that is just because I grew up with red hair and glasses. There was no blending in. That was just not available to me. And so I just have the muscle memory of it works out okay. And look, it's 2025. We have survived a pandemic and all kinds of other things, so all of us have a certain amount of muscle memory, no matter what your personality default is. That's just, we've got it now. Congrats. Because there's that sense of like, I hate to keep analogizing it to diabetes, but there is a certain extent of like, the first time your kid hits a low blood sugar, it's like PTSD. And then like the 17th time, you're like, pop some Skittles, let's go. You know what I mean? Like you know it's gonna be okay. Or if it's not okay, you'll handle it. And that's with conflict. I think so many of us are frozen because we avoid it. And we just haven't built up the muscle memory and put it in ourselves that we can do it and it'll be okay. And I think, I'm totally inspired by our community. I'm inspired by the people in my in real life community, our online community. People are doing incredibly difficult things every day. And those people are also joyful. Like that's what I try to tell my kids. I'm like, the harder something is, you open up possibilities all the way on the other end. The harder it feels, the bigger the joy on the other end. You expand your emotional spectrum every time. And that is worth it to me. Because I see people who live small lives and who try to keep themselves inside this space. And that is not the life I want. It's not the life I want. So, and that's what I teach my kids, and that's what we talk about in our community too. The pain comes with permission to live even bigger on the other side.
I think that being in a room like this and thinking about the topics that you all are thinking about reminds me that I had a wonderful childhood. The biggest problem that I had as a kid is feeling like I did not belong in my hometown. And that is because I liked to write poems instead of play softball. I was the kid who knew too many answers in class and was annoying. That's a really small problem on the scale of problems that people experience in life, and it gave me a sense of both that I had something to offer that wasn't already in the room, and also that I would be, I'd have a safe landing place when I went home, even if I said something really different than everything that was being said at school. So my parents are to credit and blame for everything that I am because they were such good parents to me and so supportive and told me that my opinion mattered. And I kept that sense of I don't belong here in every space I've ever been in, especially the law firm that I went to after I graduated from law school. And I felt every day like somebody is going to find out that I do not belong here and they are going to kick me out. And then I'm not going to be able to pay my student loans, and what am I going to do? And what kept happening to me in the firm was people would be like, "You are so real." And that is such a weird compliment. That's a weird thing to say to someone. But it sunk in over time that I was doing something that other people weren't doing, and that was just saying what I thought about things and telling stories that felt random in the moment, and using an awful lot of metaphors when I spoke, which is a habit I've not kicked. And it just keeps leading me to places where I can apparently that's who I am. You know what I mean? And it is a gift to be able to do that with Sarah in public. That's the other key that I would say. I'm not doing it by myself. I would not do this by myself. I could not do this by myself. I would have quit 2 weeks in. That's right. So to be able to do it with somebody else and to keep drawing on that sense from my parents that my opinion matters, and also to recognize more and more and more that I still pretty well have that soft landing place when I get home. There are a lot of factors in my life that I did not earn that make it okay for me to say my political opinion on the internet, and still live in my community where a lot of people disagree with me, and still be in my family where a lot of people, if I say the sun is hot, they're like, it is not, it is icy. But I'm still fundamentally okay. And that feels more and more like an obligation, right? The harder things get for people who do not have that soft landing place at home, it feels more and more like an obligation for me to be out trying to say what I see and motivate other people to do their best work in the world. So I really appreciate the question. And it inspires me as a parent to realize I need to be that for my kids every day and give them that kind of foundation. It is a gift to spend time with people who care about all the things that y'all care about. We thank you so much for inviting us back, Kentucky Youth Advocates, and I just really, really appreciate everything that you're doing in the world. And I hope sometime to hear the story from each of you of why you are doing what you're doing. So thank you so much.